There you go.
I apologize for the cricket in the background. There's a cricket in my office and I can't find it.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's driving me insane.
The headphones, did they drown it out a little bit?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Well, all right. Well, thank you both for being here. We had a third panelist who unfortunately couldn't make it. So it'll just be the two of you and some students asking you questions. So we can get started. Why don't you introduce yourselves? So I guess tell me your departments, what kind of research you do, and anything else you want to tell us.
Sure. I'll start, I guess?
Go for it.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Attardo. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Entomology and Nematology, and I study kind of broadly medical entomology, which is the biology of insects that transmit disease to humans and animals. And my kind of focus is on the physiology of these insects and with a kind of specialty in reproductive biology.
Hi, I'm Jose Torres, and I'm in the Department of Medical Microbiology and Immunology. As you see in my back there, I'm in the School of Medicine, and I've been here for 32 years. I have my whole career here, from visiting postdoc to full professor, and I retired my lab already, and I now teach undergraduate courses, human immunology and human virology. And I teach immunology for the medical students in Sacramento. And I also teach a new course called human virology on campus. So I'm also the vice chair for undergraduate education of my department.
Yeah, so actually both of our professors here are professors of pathogen disease courses. So if you have not looked at our list yet, it includes Entomology 153, which is what Dr. Tardo teaches, and MMI 177, which is what Dr. Torres teaches. So if you'd like to take a course with our lovely professors here, you can for major requirements. Something you said, Dr. Torres, I guess leads me to this maybe first question that I can ask here. You said your lab is retired. So what kind of research have you mentored students through in the recent past?
Yeah, so what happened was that I had a research lab in the third floor of Tupper Hall, and I had got to have a big research lab and train a lot of 199 undergraduate students and postdocs and graduate students. So I went the regular route of being a professor in the professorial series, and then when I got to be full professor with tenure, then I decided to do whatever I wanted, as opposed to what the university and the government wanted me to do. So I was able to start a biotech company in 2001, and that is a vaccine biotech company. They just got an approval from the FDA for a vaccine, the new generation of hepatitis B vaccine, and that took a long time. And then I just, a year ago or 2 years ago, I started a new biotech company called Cancer Immune to develop treatments and preventive vaccines against cancer based on my research that I used to do here. So again, my research lab is closed, but it has transferred into 2 companies outside of the university.
Yeah, I think that this is not a career panel necessarily, but I think it goes to show that you can do research outside of academia if you're interested in that. I guess I was more looking for, Dr. Torres, what kind of research have you mentored undergraduates through? Like what have you, I mean, I'm sure you had them in your lab when you had your lab, but once you retired your lab, what kind of research projects have you mentored students through?
So they have been projects that have to do with writing a review of the current literature on an area of interest, that it was immunology or cancer, Prostate cancer, for example, was one. And essentially, I guided the student towards looking for the latest information on what's going on in the field, and then have the student, put together a draft and then revise the draft until it was ready for review. And so I usually start asking the student questions about their interest to see if there is something that they already have a passion for, because that makes it a lot easier. Many students have family history of a disease, for example, and they want to pursue that, find more about that particular disease or infectious agent. And then we start from there, and we start with a mini review. So the students start with understanding what's going on in the field. And then, I try to explain in the best term possible, what things need to be put together for a review of the field. And that includes what is known in the field, what's going on in terms of clinical trials in case it's a disease or infectious agent related project. And also, how do you give your opinion about what's going on and what the field should be doing, or what you think that is going to happen in the near future. And that makes up, for a good project for a student that, have interest in a particular subject. So if you find out that you are interested in something because of personal experience or family issues or health issues, then that's the best thing to pursue, because you already have an interest on finding out the finer details of a particular field.
Yeah, personal interest is definitely a good starter for research. Dr. Tardo, do you want to share what kind of research you've mentored undergrads through?
Sure. So let's see, during the pandemic, we were doing kind of similar things with meta-analyses when we weren't able to do, when people weren't able to be in the lab to do actual research. But some of the research projects we've done, I had a student who worked on looking at the effects of dietary composition on the development of mosquito larvae, which she published as a first author paper when she finished up. But so like the research there was, we were looking to see is like what is important for mosquito larvae for their development and growth and things like that. So we made up a diet that has different sort of proportions of carbohydrates and fat and protein in it, to see when we adjust the different levels of those kind of fundamental nutrients, how does that impact the development of the larvae. And so what we did was we came up with some items to build the diet out of. So we used rice flour for our carbohydrate source, and yeast extract for our protein source. And then we mixed different proportions together, and then basically reared out larvae under these different conditions. We found some interesting things, like that mosquitoes really like carbohydrate rich diets, but if there isn't enough protein, then they don't do very well on it, which so if we add just a little bit of protein to the diet, then they go from basically to taking a very long time to develop and coming out very small and kind of underdeveloped, to if you just add a little bit of protein to that, they take off and go in the opposite direction, where they're bigger than all the other diets and that develop more rapidly. So it kind of tells us a little bit about the fundamental nutritional needs of these organisms, and that tells us a lot about, what they're feeding on in their breeding sites, and are there ways that we can kind of manipulate this system, possibly for larval control. And that project's kind of led into a little deeper analysis, is like, how do mosquito larvae choose their food? do they seek out certain types of food? So we're doing some behavioral assays where we're videotaping mosquito larvae and offering them a number of different choices for food to see what they select. And then we're trying to understand, we're looking more deeply at nutritional signaling pathways in the mosquito. So there's a pathway that detects amino acids called the target of rapamycin pathway that we're interested in, that we know regulates egg development in the mosquitoes. So mosquitoes don't develop eggs until after they've taken blood, and they detect the digested protein coming out of the blood to trigger egg development. So we think that maybe like a baseline level of protein is required for the mosquitoes to also undergo larval development. So we want to play around with maybe inhibiting this pathway and seeing what kind of effects it has on larval growth and things like that. So, and then another project that we have going that actually has turned out, I was a little skeptical of, but has turned out to be extremely interesting, was one of my students wanted to know what the impact of forest fire ash was on larval mosquitoes. So she went out to one of the wildfire sites and collected some ash. And then what we did was we set up different concentrations of wildfire ash in oviposition cups. So these are little cups that we put into the mosquito cages where the female mosquitoes decide where to lay their eggs. So we put cups with no ash and then increasing concentrations. And we assumed that they were going to try to avoid it, that it would be kind of a toxic thing, but we ended up having the exact opposite response, in that the mosquitoes absolutely loved it. And we have a linear response of the number of eggs laid with the concentration of ash that's in the oviposition site. So now we've done some behavioral assays, and like the pregnant female mosquitoes are very attracted to the smell of the ash, which we don't know what it is. So now we're doing some mass spectrometry on the volatiles that are coming off of this ash containing water to see if we can understand what's attracting them. And then, that's of potential use for new types of traps that might attract mosquitoes that are looking to lay eggs. And we're also interested in like, why is this associated with a specific type of foliage that's being burned, or is this a general property of ash? Or so these two little projects have turned out very nicely, but they've also generated a lot of new questions that we can kind of follow for other people to pursue. So
yeah, so if anyone is interested, I'm sure Dr. Eduardo will have a project for you in the near future.
Yeah. We're kind of we're a little maxed out with undergrads right now, but there's always turnover. So
yeah. Well, that's very cool. I think your examples highlighted how the very cool process of research that just like generates more questions, right? Like you answer a question and then you're like, but there's another question here. So there's always a question to be answered, which is the cool thing about research. Students, if you have questions, feel free to like raise your hand, or you can put them in the chat.
We are in different departments and schools, but we're in the same business, because mosquitoes are the major killers of humankind. I think that's the single entity that have killed more humans than anything else.
Most dangerous animal on the planet.
Correct. Yes, malaria alone. I mean, it's just so anything that you can develop in order for us to get rid of certain mosquitoes. I guess some of them, we don't want them all out because there's some that are important for the ecosystems and all that. But again, the ones that carry these diseases, we would like to control them the best we can. And that's been very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, we're working right now exclusively on a species of mosquito called Aedes aegypti, which isn't native to California, but they showed up in 2013 and have since made California their home. They've spread down to the border with Mexico, all the way up to Shasta County. And we're also working on insecticide resistance in these mosquitoes, because nothing that any of the vector control groups has done anything to slow their spread. So we're trying to figure out why. So I don't know if the wildfires have something to do with this spread. If this, we're comparing like collection data with fire data throughout the years to see if there's any kind of relationship there between the spread and occurrence of fires and things. So it's kind of interesting. They're also very nice. They're almost better than Drosophila as a model organism, because they lay their eggs, and then their eggs are designed that they can dry out. And we can, whenever we need new mosquitoes, we just put them back in water again and they hatch out. So we're able to store them away until we need them. So they're like perfect little model organism. They're easy for students to work with, but they're also the vectors of like dengue fever, Zika, yellow fever, chikungunya. So they're also medically important. So
how about West Nile virus here?
Yeah, it's here, but it's a different species of mosquito that transmits that one. So if
you cannot carry West Nile, the Egyptid, not yet.
Not yet, no. Hopefully they won't. So they don't, they preferentially feed on people. Aedes aegypti are very kind of domesticated mosquitoes, and birds are the reservoirs for the West Nile virus. So Culex mosquitoes prefer to feed on birds, but they will occasionally feed on people. And that's where you get that interface where the virus jumps from birds into humans.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm from Puerto Rico, so I remember, Aedes aegypti there and dengue,
Oh yeah.
First time you get, you're fine. Second time you get the hemorrhagic fever, and it's
no joke.
An immune response. Yeah, it's due to an immune response to the antigens the second time. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun kind of connecting. I like working anywhere from the genetic level, molecular biochemical, up to the ecological. It's fun to connect those kind of disparate areas of research, but finding where they overlap and how something in basic physiology interfaces with the ecology of the system and things like that. So
fascinating. Yeah.
So for the students here, it's the really cool thing about One Health is that you get to see all these like interfacing parts of health and disease and research. So even if you are interested in like medical effects of infectious diseases, working on something like with model mosquitoes or something like that could teach you a lot about what that is like, even if it's not directly related to clinical practice. So just something to keep your eyes open for. Does anyone want to ask a question? Linda, go for it.
Yeah, so it's two-parted. So the first part is, how involved are you in your in the research projects of your undergraduates? And secondly, I'm not necessarily interested in wet lab, but it might be good to know if we have a research project idea, how do we go about acquiring resources in your lab? Is it just that you have them already and you can give them to us? Or is there you have to prepare grant funding? How does that, in general, how would that work?
Yeah, so those, I don't want to, do you want to go, Jose, first? Or?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So usually what I'll sit down with the students who are interested in doing work and try to get a feel for where their interests lie and what might be the best match in terms of projects. So if they have a real interest in a specific topic. So like the ASH project was something that I had not thought of at all. And the student came up with the entire thing. And fortunately, rearing mosquitoes is pretty cheap. We just need fish food and eggs. So, as long as we're not doing any hardcore molecular stuff or anything, we're able to do a lot of these experiments relatively cheaply. But then she was able to, we took the preliminary results from her work and put them into a undergraduate fellowship. So she was, she received $3,000 from that to do additional work. So with that money, she was able to, we're paying for her training in mass spectrometry and doing the actual, buying the reagents and things for the work with that. So that's helped. And then, but if that's not the case, I'll cover the, within reason, I'll cover the any costs associated with the project. And then I do my best to spend a lot of time with my students. Some weeks are better than others when, if I'm getting slammed with a combination of teaching, or I have a grant due, or I'm trying to get papers done. So there's back and forth, but in times when I'm not able to be there, I'm usually in the lab at the same time, but I'm not always have time to work one-on-one with someone through the entire project. But oftentimes I will pair them with a grad student in my lab who is able to kind of show them the ropes and help them out with things. So usually it's a combination of meeting with me and also working with other members of the lab. And to be honest, at this point, the graduate students know where things are better than I do, because you start to lose track of time and where things happen to go, and when you're stuck in your office responding to emails and attending meetings and various things like that. So
yeah, one thing that I do is, now that my lab is retired, I'm the vice chair for undergraduate education, and the School of Medicine, runs like a business. So it's like they do have some funding for certain things, and we have the faculty in the department that are working in many different projects. Now students are going back, undergraduate students going back to the labs. So I can connect people with individuals that are doing certain kind of research in the School of Medicine, which is sometimes difficult for students to reach, especially some of the physicians doing research and so on. So I help students, get places so they can do the research or interest. And we have students that in the medical school that run the free clinics, for example, and they're always looking for undergraduates to do collaborative study with them that sometimes includes samples from patients, and sometimes helping the people in the community getting basic medical care and what they need to solve the problems that they have. So there are many opportunities in the School of Medicine in general in order to connect. We have a School of Nursing also. We have, again, a lot of resources and many individuals doing biomedical research that you could ask me to help you connect with.
Yeah,
everybody's very busy. It's very hard to just send an email to a physician and expect that they will see the email or even answer or even consider you to do some work. Sorry, forgot to.
Yeah, if I'm going to add a little bit to the answers too, Linda. I've been in a few different labs when I was an undergrad, and it really depends on how big the lab is and how busy the professor is as well, about how hands-on they're going to be. I've been in a lab where I met specifically with the PI like almost on a weekly basis because it was a really small lab, and she just made it a point to mentor everyone, even if it was in a group setting. So, I had contact with her every week. I've been in a lab where I met the PI, I think once or twice. And most of my work was done with a postdoc, and that was okay. The postdoc knew everything that I needed to know, and I was okay with that. I met with the professor a couple of times, and it's just the nature of how big the lab was for him. So it kind of depends on, I guess, what department you're in and how big the labs are. Yeah.
Sorry, that was kind of an emergency thing, so I have to answer. Sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries. Were you gonna add something?
No, I was offering the students, and the program usually, that's what I mean. Sometimes I've gotten a few students that are not able to find a place to do their practicum, and I could connect them with people that where they can go to a lab and do their practicum there. So that's another thing that I can help the program with, and students in particular that are interested in an area. Sometimes it's very hard to find somebody that will support you in the area that you're interested in. You go to a lab and then you select from what they have, because they have funding for certain things and so on. And again, many labs have many restrictions for undergraduates because they're doing work with highly pathogenic substances or samples from patients, and there's privacy issues, and there's a lot of things that create problems for undergraduates to go and do biomedical research with scientists and physicians that are working on medical issues. So, but again, I can help with the connections.
Yeah, it can be. So in my prior life, I was a research scientist where I was spending much more time at the bench. I think one of the frustrations in being a professor is how many directions you're torn in at one time. So it does make it difficult to sort of dedicate large chunks of time. I would love to spend all day with my students kind of working in the lab, but it's just not realistic, unfortunately. So I do my best, but it can be, I try to meet with my students at least once a week or once every couple of weeks to kind of, make sure everything's going smoothly and answer any questions. And then we also have like a journal club that we meet and we talk about. We try to have everyone find papers that are related to what they're working on. And then we just get together and discuss them. So at least it gives us an opportunity so they can also hear about what the other people in the lab are doing and things like that. So
when I was an undergrad in lab, that was mostly the interactions that I had. If they were like weekly or consistent interactions with professors, that's mostly what they were like in group settings. It's understandable because professors have a lot on their plates. They were also very fun meetings, I think.
I mean, the training is usually not done by professors. The training is done by undergrads. I mean, undergrads that have more experience than you do in the lab, graduate students, postdocs, junior investigators. I mean, the PI is writing grants like crazy and writing papers and presenting their work. So again, if you're a good scientist in the bench, they put you in an office and you become a writer, essentially. And that's what happened to us. Most of us that were good in the bench, we cannot go back to the bench. I used to go to my lab and the students and postdocs don't come to the lab, I mean, you might break something or you might damage an essay because you have been in your office for so many years already. You don't know what's going on here. Don't touch the machine. Don't touch the PCR. You don't know how to program that. We spent a lot of time doing, running samples to make it work well. So it got to that point. So, it's a problem, that I used to love to work in the lab, but at some point you cannot anymore. So somebody is going to train you is somebody else than the professor, okay? The professor is just busy doing so many things that animal use protocol, human use protocol. I mean, there is a lot of paperwork to be done tons of emails that are urgent every day. So it's not that we don't want to be with the students, it's that we don't have time to do it. It's just we get so busy with other things other than trying to go to the lab and do experiments. I used to love that. I mean, getting results and being the first one to see the results is the greatest thing in the world. But then you depend on other people to do research for you. You just have the ideas and that's about it. But, I had some stories of undergrads. One of my undergrads that came as a 199 student, just like you going to a lab doing your practicum, he published a paper as the first author. And again, he went on to Harvard, got his PhD, and now he runs, a company. So it's, big things happen when you go and get a little project in a research lab as an undergrad.
Yeah, I spent the better part of this week rewriting all my SOPs because they've updated the template. So it's
paperwork.
Yeah, it's not how I enjoy spending my time, but it's what needs to be done. So it is what it is.
There is inspections on the lab, and there's so much paperwork, and then you have to write your grants and your papers and present your work and
teach
teach and do your serve in so many committees, running around back and forth. Sometimes I have 2 or 3 at the same time, so it's just a very busy kind of life. And again, there is another alternative. Working with companies is also something that we can do these days. And it's a different kind of world there. In companies, you don't have you're not training students, you're not serving on committees. There is, you're trying to develop a product that helps people. So that's also a career consideration for undergrad these days. Not everybody has to go and try to, grind your head against the stone and to be in the professorial series and try to get tenure in a major institution. It's a tough life.
Yeah, I'm glad that you both kind of went into what your weekly life is like, because I was going to ask, so the students can have a little bit of context about what we mean when we say professors are busy. It means they're busy, doing a lot of different tasks, wearing a lot of hats.
I think there's the stereotype of the guy in the lab coat with the safety goggles on, with the pipetting colored liquids, and that's really not what we spend our time doing for the most part.
That's only when you get a big grant. They send the School of Medicine sent a photographer from the Sacramento Bee to my lab, so I have to pose with the coat. So somebody give me a coat and I have a pipette. That's the pictures that you see of scientists, but we're not there. People who are we just have the ideas. We have people that do everything else, postdoc, graduate students, technicians. To them go the glory, because it's tough to do that every day. But I used to love it. It's just, you cannot keep doing it in our system because, again, you have to go to your office, write your grant, your papers, fill up all the paperwork, serve on committees, present your work. Your life becomes everything else except going to the lab and doing your own research with your own hands.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do we have any questions from the students?
I have a question, but I'm not a student. Can I ask it anyway?
No.
That's fair. I understand. I was wondering, what advice would you give students who are just kind of dipping their toe into research, right? Because sometimes it can feel really intimidating to contact professors and build your network, and it can seem really overwhelming. So as previous mentors and as, celebrated professors, any advice would be great to know.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with people who come in and I can tell they've already done their research on my lab and they know what I'm working on, and or they have ideas in mind of what they'd like to do. That may not be their perception of what we do may not be real, but at least I know that they've been thinking about it and they're kind of engaged, rather than someone who's looking just to check off their practicum box. It kind of shows me that there's sort of a genuine motivation and an interest in the topic, rather than just trying to accomplish a requirement.
Before you answer Dr. Torres, I'm gonna do a follow-up question here. Maida actually had asked this question earlier, but when students are reaching out to you, would you prefer them to specify that they have to do a practicum, or just show an interest in research in general?
I mean, I have a student now who's she's not doing a practicum or anything, but she was very persistent and very interested. And I said, all right, well, if someone is this persistent, then they're really, into it. So that's kind of what got her in the door. So, and, I kind of hit my peak of like 4 students at a time, because I think beyond that, I feel like I'm just not able to effectively mentor people. I feel like kind of an absentee parent beyond that. So I try to limit the number of people I take in. So that's an influencing factor, is like if it's someone who's really motivated and interested in what we're doing, that's kind of, because I get a lot of requests, but it's just not, I don't have the capacity to take them all. Unfortunately, I would love it if our department would hire another medical entomologist, so we could sort of spread the load around a little bit. But so I feel guilty when I'm not able to take people on, but there's also, there's the amount that you can kind of reasonably do, and sort of so that the students also have an effective and constructive experience, rather than just sort of sitting around wondering like, what am I supposed to be doing here? So I try to balance like our capacity with the students' needs and my capacity to kind of function as an effective mentor.
Dr. Torres, do you have any advice for undergrads or thoughts on mentioning a practicum?
Well, again, one thing that is difficult is to contact the professors. It's very hard to just go to the office and knock in the door and just show yourself up. That might not work, because he might not be there, or he might, he or she might not, people are busy, so they might not be in the offices anymore, and calling also is kind of hard these days. Cold calling, because there's so many telemarketers and so on, that you try to filter everything from the phone. So you try to send first an email and see if they will answer, and be patient. You give it a week or so before you send 2 or 3 more follow up, because that might scare the person that you're just too anxious about it. And also, a way to go is to go to the department. Like a person like me in the department can connect you with somebody, and there are people that are in the graduate group coordinators. So there are certain individuals that can connect you with professors, and they do have the direct line to the professors. And the physicians are different, because you cannot even call them, and you sometimes we don't even know the emails, because they don't want patients to be sending emails to physicians, for example. That's the system we have. So you need somebody like me that is able to go and connect directly with the person and get you an opportunity to present your case if you're interested in the area that they are working on. But being interested in something in general and finding somebody that's doing that on campus or in the medical center and connecting yourself with them, sometimes it's very disappointing, because those 2 things might not match. So you have to have an open mind that perhaps the first time that you do a little bit of research in a lab, you have to bite the bullet and do what they tell you to do, where they already have funded to do, as opposed to what you specifically would like to do. So even in a lab that does what you think they do, they have restrictions. So you cannot just work in a different virus just because it's a virus lab, because there's a lot of paperwork. For example, a virus is pathogenic, you have to be approved, and you have to get certain training also that is necessary for you to be able to touch the samples and so on. So it is a process. So you need to be open-minded. But if you really have an interest that is very strong, there's always a way of finding somebody who will help you. Okay, I've been here for so many years. I know, what people are doing, and if I cannot help you, at least I can tell you this person is the person that can help you.
Yeah, usually if I can't take someone, I will provide names of other labs that are doing some things that are similar, or that I think, who would be particularly good mentors that I'll refer them to. So I usually, yeah, phone calls for me. I rarely answer the phone, but like email is probably the best way to get me. And if for some reason I don't respond to the first time, don't take it as a personal slight, because occasionally the email is coming in so fast and furious that I mean to catch up. I'll try to make a mental note to respond to that one, and then by the end of the day, it's 50 or 60 emails down on the list, and I can't even find it again. So don't be afraid to email me a second time if I don't respond, or be dissuaded if I don't get back to you if it takes me a few days, because occasionally I'm sort of triaging my responses. So.
Yeah, some students, are used to instant responses. I guess they have if I put my phone or my computer to tell me when I receive an email, it will be like that, because I have my email for 25 years, okay, the same email, and I receive hundreds and hundreds and thousands of emails a day, okay? So again, I have filters of all kind and all that, but if you send an email, it might be, especially if you don't use UC Davis address, it might be lost out there in the firewalls and burned forever. So, you give a week or so, but some people, some students send me an email in the morning and in the afternoon. Oh, you didn't answer my email. I send it at 9 in the morning already, and it's 2 o'clock. I said, no, we don't work that way. We're very busy people. We're not looking, all the time at our phone to see who posted what or who sent what or whatever. Our life is filled with life as opposed to, curiosity about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
So we are very different generations.
As we always tell students, professors might miss your email. It's okay to follow up. Their inboxes get full.
But give them a few days. I tell my students, just put urgent. So sometimes I get an email that says urgent. That's the only thing. And I know, okay, this is a student that I have tried to contact me 2 or 3 times.
Well, all right, we're almost out of time. Maybe, is there one last question that you want to ask?
Can I ask one?
Yes.
Okay, very last question kind of thing, but what makes or has made research worth it for you?
Well, for me, it was that, I was doing very basic research for a long time that I knew was applicable to help people, but I was not helping anybody. I was training students, of course, and postdocs and doing many things, but I wanted to produce something that helped people. So by founding companies, I was able to do that too, to produce something that eventually will be approved by the FDA and will be used by people. And now I can, be in peace with myself, saying, okay, I spent a lot of time doing work with viruses and vaccines and human diseases, and now I have made a contribution to the field, leaving this world a little bit better than when I entered it. So, and again, for my children to know that that's the important thing, to do something that is useful. And it's very hard to do the basic research and accumulation of all this information for somebody else to use in order to help, the environment or plants or animals or people. It doesn't matter. You just want to do something positive for the world.
Yeah, I think that was my relationship with research is kind of multi-layered. So there's a sort of selfish reason for doing it, and that I just enjoy finding out new things and learning things that nobody's ever, so like I used to work on tsetse flies, which are these weird flies that give birth and they lactate. And like nobody had done any molecular biology on these insects. So it was like a wide open, like, frontier. So everything I found about this was just totally new and it was exciting for me. Is it going to save the world? No. But it's interesting. And I mean, I think there's, in some ways, I almost find my teaching to be more impactful than my research in some ways, but I do think my research helps more so the scientific community in that it provides, stepping stones of new knowledge from which other scientists can build off of. And that's probably the greatest impact that my research has. Probably my discoveries aren't going to change the world. I think most people, we're all sort of standing on the shoulders of the people that came before us. But every little piece contributes to the whole of, kind of humanity's knowledge of the world around us. So in that sense, I feel like it's doing a good thing. And it's also satisfying sort of my own fundamental curiosity. But also if you're able to find out something really interesting and maybe engage somebody else's curiosity and get them to go into a career in science, then you're also kind of influencing the next generation of people. So I think those are the two aspects of research that really are what kind of keep me motivated and what kind of impact I think my work has. So.
Well, thank you both for those inspiring last words. I do want to be mindful of your time. It is 3:30 already, but thank you so much for being here, for all your wisdom and knowledge. We appreciate you. Clapping hand here.
Yes, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Nice meeting everybody. If you need some help, just send me an email.
Yes, me
Maybe
too.
a reminder.
If I don't answer, just send me a second one that says urgent.
Yeah.
In the subject.
All right. Well, thank you both.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.